Welcome to another episode of The Artsy Raven, a show about writing and publishing with your host, J.F. Garrard.
Welcome to another episode of the Artsy Raven, and today our special guest is Teresa and Cassidy. So Teresa Alfeld is an award-winning documentary and dramatic writer-director from Vancouver, living and working on the unceded Coast Salish territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and TELUS Nations. She is a member of the Directors Guild of Canada and Doc Canada. Cassidy Waring. Cassidy is a queer Vancouver-based artist who transforms her struggles into raw indie folk songs that resonate with uncompromising honesty, sharp wit, and vivid storytelling. Growing up in suburban Calgary in the 90s, in what initially is a happy and stable household, a chain of events suddenly cracked the family's foundation with addiction, abuse, and violence, and leading into an unthinkable tragedy. And years later, well into her music career, Cassidy pursues therapy, receiving a diagnosis of complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and begins to unpack what happened within her family. And today we are here speaking because there's a new documentary coming out called Hearse Chasing, which follows Cassidy. So welcome.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
Now, let's see, like I have a documentary person here and I have a musician here. So can you tell me a little bit about what led you on your journey?
To make the documentary specifically?
I guess so. So where do we start? Where do we start? Where did you guys grow up?
Well, I grew up in Calgary, and I moved out to Vancouver about 10 years ago-ish, I think. And Teresa and I met in 2021.
Okay. And Teresa, where did you start off?
So I grew up in East Vancouver.
Okay.
I was lucky to go to a high school with a film program, and from there I studied film at SFU, spent some time in Toronto and Victoria, and then eventually found myself back in Vancouver and had the pleasure of meeting Cassidy.
Okay. So how did you decide to make a documentary together?
I'll take this one, Cass. So yeah, Cassie and I met in 2021 through a mutual friend. Cassidy at the time was living on Main Island, and when we met, it was deep pandemic, and Cass had been immersed in family history work and research about again the tragedy that befell her family when she was a young person and a teenager. And when she shared with me, casually the work that she was doing, and of course this was part of her music as well, it had all the pieces that one would look for in a documentary. So, I suggested that we explore that at the same time as the work she was doing, and here we are. But Cass, maybe you want to speak more to what it was like on your end.
Sure, yeah. So I was living on Main Island, as Teresa said, and um, the pandemic for me, like for a lot of people, everything kind of slowed down, and I spent a lot of time trying out different types of therapy, and it was kind of the first time in my adult life that I really gave a lot of time and space to kind of looking at my family history and my past and understanding the impacts on me and my mental health and my physical health. And I just really got into it. And then, I was looking into family documents. I was watching a lot of home videos, some of which I had just found during those years. So I was really, really immersed in my family history. And I maybe getting a little bit obsessed with trying to understand things and trying to use it in a creative way as well, because I've always used creativity, especially songwriting, as a way to understand things and understand whatever I'm going through. So yeah, it was no different during that time. And I also have a background in film as well before music.
Oh,
So
okay.
the idea of doing a film was very exciting to me and totally up my alley. So I don't think that I would have came up with the idea and approached anyone about it. It was really about Teresa and I connecting, and we became very fast friends and developed a lot of trust. And I think that's really what allowed us to feel like this was the right project for both of us.
Can you tell us a little bit about your family history? Like, were you looking at immigration, or are you looking at things that happen in the family? Like, I'm trying to
Yeah,
understand. Sorry.
yeah, sure. Yeah, no, more the latter, things that happened in my family. My I grew up really, really close with my family, both my parents, and I have a brother who's 4 years younger than me. And we had a lot of family around us in Calgary. Both sets of grandparents were living there, aunts and uncles. Um, and so when I say looking into family history, it was kind of just trying to understand some of the relationships within the family, just kind of in like the last two or three generations, really, and understanding people's relationship with their mental health and with addiction, and my own relationship with mental health and addiction, and just really trying to kind of understand how things can kind of fall apart, and yeah.
Can I ask, do you know what country they came from? Like, I'm just trying, like, was there any cultural stigma attached to mental health?
Um, I can't say for sure. I know that my dad's side of the family is from England, a few generations back, and my mom's side of the family was in New Brunswick for many generations actually, and I think before that different places in Europe. I actually don't have all of that information.
I have to admit, when I read your story, I mean, it talked about a tragedy. Like, do you talk about that in the documentary?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. My mom
Is it
passed away when I was
okay.
sorry. Yeah,
Oh, no, no,
my
no,
mom
no. Sorry. I'm really sorry. No, keep going.
the documentary does really focus on this and me trying to understand my mom's death, and that is the tragedy that we speak of. Um, and yeah, she passed away when I was 17. There was a lot of addiction and um, abuse in my family, and yeah.
I'm very sorry. I mean, my mom passed away a few years ago too. There's just no replacement
Mm.
for mothers. Um,
Yeah, that's so true. I'm sorry to hear
yeah.
that.
Mom would say, it's a happen, move on. Like they're very they don't like talking about mental health. People in the Asian culture, they just like happen, stop. They anyhow, it's slowly changing, slowly changing. But
Hmm.
Teresa, were there any challenges to doing a documentary? I mean, I'm assuming you probably have to write lots of boring paperwork and stuff like that to get things going, or to rent equipment and all that stuff.
Yeah, so challenges, I've had the pleasure of two feature documentaries that I wrote and directed and produced prior to this. And the last doc I did also concerned addiction and mental health. It was the story of Doug Bennett and Doug and the Slugs, and that creative person's really untimely death as a result of addiction and mental health. And so I was familiar with this territory when I met Cassidy. Um, but knowing again how much infrastructure and support is needed to safely and ethically and holistically really explore stories of trauma with respect to mental health and addiction and tragedy really. So that was certainly the biggest focus for myself as well as for Cassidy, and we were lucky to work with Melissa James from Sigil Films and Taylor Johansson as our producers, who were all on the same page from day one that really infrastructure was what was needed here in order to make sure that everyone was meaningfully supported. One of the first things we did was bring on a mental health coordinator, and Tolmy Greaves's role was to come up with a full safety plan for this production and put in supports along the way, not just for cast, but also to crew. And lastly, we ended up working with TELUS Originals as our major funder, and they were fantastic in understanding really the complexity of telling these types of stories, and actually even providing mental health support to us as a production to use how we saw fit. So, again, that was certainly the biggest piece to be cognizant of at all times.
Now Cassidy, I mean, you're here. Usually I interview the directors, and usually the subject isn't there. But like, did you find it hard to have people follow you around as you do stuff? I'm just wondering. I don't know.
You know, I no, honestly, I didn't find that part challenging. I definitely found the process challenging in different ways, but I've been in the arts my whole life, so that part didn't feel as uncomfortable. I was more kind of feeling anxious and nervous about the people that I had asked to participate, my family and friends. I wanted to make sure they felt comfortable. I know it's not. Um, a regular thing to have these types of challenging conversations while you're being filmed. So, but I didn't find that part too hard.
Um, so Teresa, like, I mean, was there anything that surprised you at this as the story unfolded? Like, did you have a direction in mind, and did it change?
Yeah, I had a direction in mind in making this film. Absolutely. We structured it to follow Cassidy on her journey back to Calgary. And so this film occurred very much in that container. Um, in terms of surprises, I would say it was surprising to see really how deeply the events that occurred in Cassidy's childhood had affected not just those who were directly involved, but almost an expanded circle of people who were involved in a different way. So this is to say that that breakdown of her family really deeply impacted those who I wouldn't necessarily have expected in a really, again, profound way, and a way that is still felt today. I believe we're almost 20 years after the death of Cassidy's mother. It was, even though I think we were all prepared to encounter people's residual, again, trauma, it was even more profound, I believe, than we expected.
Now, for both of you, what do you hope the audience takes away from viewing this documentary?
I'll start. Yeah, I mean, I really hope that people feel seen. My story might not be the exact same as somebody else's, but there are definitely shared feelings and shared experiences. I think addiction has affected probably everybody in some shape or form in their families or in their communities, and mental health as well. Everyone has their own challenges with mental health. I hope that maybe it can be validating for some people. I know that complex PTSD is something that people are starting to talk about more, but it hasn't always been part of the mental health conversation in the way that it's starting to be today. So I hope to bring a little bit of awareness and also to help normalize therapy and seeking support, seeking help. I know that conversation is changing these days as well, which I'm very grateful for. But I want to be part of that conversation if I can. Um, yeah, and I hope people can see that having these conversations, as challenging as they might be, is possible. I'm not saying that it's easy or a clean process in any way. It hasn't been for me either. It's been challenging, but um, I I can say I'm personally really grateful that my relationships with my family and people involved in the story, um, I think they have benefited and improved by us being more honest and forthcoming with each other, and kind of getting to grieve and process together rather than just not talking about anything.
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly echo everything Cass said. One of the things that was most striking in following Cass was, I just want to say, her bravery in having these conversations with family members. These were extremely challenging conversations to have, and there had been so much distance, so many layers of complexity, and she was really the only person in her family that was saying, "Hey, like, I'm willing to talk about this, and I think it would help us all if we finally talked about this." And so when I think of audiences watching this film, I hope that they see some possibility and some promise in the notion of, taking a deep breath, settling in and asking questions in a supportive and non completely unplanned way. I hope that they are again inspired by Cassidy's courage in confronting challenging family stories and problematic relationships. And as she said, it might not look the exact same in everyone's family, but the notion of turning towards, not away, I think is really meaningful. I mean, it's impacted my life, and I think many of the crew who worked on this film too. We've all taken something from her path.
Okay. Um, like, if you had to do it again, did you have any lessons learned from the process? Like, if you want, would you change anything at all?
If we had to do
Do
it
the
again,
documentary
no.
again?
No,
Okay.
not at all. I'm really proud of the team. I think this was really well planned. I think we built a really functional, again, container for a high risk shoot. I'm extremely proud of how everyone performed and carried themselves, and I wouldn't do anything differently.
Yeah, I echo that.
Like for other people that want to do documentaries, um, either as being a subject or being the person doing the documentary, do you have any advice for these people as they embark on their journeys?
I mean, I've been working in the industry for about 20 years and in documentary specifically for about 10. I think, it's certainly not a perfect industry or ecosystem for that matter. I believe that anyone who wants to enter the space, you need a lot of passion and energy in order to really see a project through from beginning to end. So I would encourage first time documentary filmmakers to make sure they choose their subject, their topic as something that they really want to dig into for a long time.
As the subject, I guess I would say, um, for me, it was so important to work with people that I really trust. And we, like Teresa said, we put, the whole team really put a lot of effort into making sure that everyone felt really supported and felt safe going into these conversations. And I think that was really, really important. So I would just say, um, yeah, make sure you're doing everything you need to take care of yourself. And um, yeah.
Well, I think because you're a musician, I'm sure there's a lot of people that want to know about your music and did it like you show a lot of in the documentary. And like, did you pick certain songs or like I'm sure you have a catalog of things to choose from.
Yeah, I mean, I was working on my latest album during this process, and you see some of that in the documentary as well. And these projects, I guess, in a sense, they're separate, but they were really about the same thing. They're really about me trying to understand living with complex trauma, how that's affected me, and understanding my mom's death better, and um, how it's impacted me. So really, the two went hand in hand for this project. And yeah, there were certain songs to focus on in the documentary because they were just the right songs. They were for the project. They were the material was um, linked.
Okay, I guess one last question. Like I know when you do a documentary, you follow someone for a long time. How did you know the story was ready to be told? Like why now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Why now? Again, Cassidy was in a particular moment of working through and processing what happened in her family, and she was also at a particular point where she was growing as a musician and getting ready to release that second album. Um, If I Had Only Been Better, which you can listen to on Spotify, it's fantastic. Um, it was absolutely the right time. And she had been talking about going back to Calgary again, regardless of the film. This was something
Mhm.
needed to do as part of her personal growth and as part of healing. And so there was no question this was the time to film.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for spending time with us today, and I hope that the audience, after viewing your film, will, reflect on their lives and if they need help, to get some help. And yeah, I wish you best of luck on both of your journeys.
Yes, thanks
Thank
for having
you.
me.
The Artsy Raven is produced by Dark Heel Express. Introduction voiceover by Chris Gorman. Music by Tim Moore. Please access your bonus content on the Patreon website. Thank you very much for listening, and please stay safe.